Frequency, Chapter 10, Part 3. She opened her eyes and took the radio in her telekinetic grasp. It floated close to her face, and she gazed at its smooth white surface.
Addie, do you remember how we met? What?
Addie had to fight down a sob.
Yeah? I didn't believe your story, right? I thought it was some kind of practical joke. I remember.
Addie whispered.
I was so afraid. Do you know why I came back?
Addie made no attempt to answer. Vinyl glanced at the princesses gathered at the table before letting out a long, deep sigh.
I came back because I realized that you were in trouble. It didn't matter whether I believed you or not, I knew I had to help. I wanted to save you. Like some pony saved my father. Your father?
Addie sucked down a deep breath, but it didn't stifle her hiccups.
What does he have to do with it?
Vinyl felt tears in her eyes. The words resisted her. Her throat constricted and her heart hammered, but she reached inside and forced it out.
My father could have died, Addie. He came very close to it. But then he heard a voice on the radio. The voice saved him. It helped him believe that there was hope. Vinyl.
She took the radio in both hooves, gripping it as a renewed fortitude came over her.
I'm that voice now, Addie, and you're my father. I didn't believe you, and that was the biggest mistake I've ever made. So I'm telling you to believe me. Have faith. I will not abandon you. You hear me? You need to have hope.
Silence filled the room, save for the pattering of the rain on the cool floor and Addie's quiet sniffling. Vinyl kept her focus on the radio, hardly noticing the looks the princesses were sharing amongst themselves. Her teeth ground together as the quiet lingered.
Vinyl, I had hope. You gave it to me when you came back. It meant so much to me. I know.
Vinyl smiled weakly.
I didn't get it until I went to Luna, but I do now. No, you don't.
Addie whispered.
You have no idea. You can't imagine how happy I was to hear your voice again.
Vinyl bit her lip and kept quiet, rubbing the moisture from her eyes.
You gave me the most precious gift I've ever known.
Addie sighed, a long, resigned sound.
The least I can do is hold on to it. I'll try to keep hope. That's the spirit.
Vinyl relaxed, a smile spreading across her face.
We'll see one another someday. That's a promise. I believe you, Vinyl.
Vinyl beamed as she set the radio back on the table. It was only then that she noticed how all three princesses were watching her with warm smiles. She gave a little cough and crossed her hooves.
Okay, so, don't you mares have some directions to give Addie or something?
Twilight chuckled and took the radio in her magic.
So, Addie, are you up for a course correction?
A long, resounding sigh emitted from the radio.
I'd really rather get some sleep, if that's okay. Besides, I have a lot to think about. That's fine.
Twilight replied with a small nod.
Just remember, we're gonna get you through this. Right.
Addie's tone made Vinyl flinch.
I'll have the specs ready for you next time, okay? One more check can't hurt. Sounds good.
Twilight let the radio drift back down to the table.
Good night, Addie. Good night, all of you. And Vinyl?
Vinyl leaned forward, her ears perking.
Yeah?
A long pause.
Thanks.
The speaker went dead. Vinyl heaved a sigh and pressed the small button, turning the radio off.
Well, that could have gone better. On the contrary.
Luna smiled her way.
You did wonderfully.
Her ears perked.
I did? You didn't let her give up hope.
Celestia said, her smile mimicking Luna's.
You're being a great friend for her.
Twilight added.
It's exactly what Addie's going to need at times like this. And it's exactly why I wanted you to be our liaison with her, instead of just taking over communication entirely.
Luna concluded.
Okay, stop it.
Vinyl ducked her head, her cheeks burning.
You make me sound a lot better than I really am.
Celestia tisked.
You do yourself a disservice. You showed that you can be there for your friend. That's something worthy of praise. I'm just offering a bunch of dumb words.
Vinyl countered with a huff.
It's you ponies who will actually be helping her. Don't discount your contribution.
Twilight's smile faded, and her tone became lecturing.
Sometimes, all a pony needs to get through things is some positive reinforcement. Addie needs you now more than ever. Well, all the positive reinforcement in the world won't matter a can of beans if Addie can't get here.
Vinyl looked to each princess in turn as she spoke.
What are we gonna do to help her? You just said that she would die if she tried to come to Equestria.
They exchanged uncertain looks, but it was Twilight who spoke.
We don't know how accurate our readings are. We need a way for meteorology stations around the world to get back to us with the results. And that could take weeks or even months. But you're princesses!
Vinyl threw up her hooves.
Can't you, I don't know, fly up there and thin out the clouds or something with your super awesome alicorn magic? Even alicorns can't fly that high, Miss Scratch.
Celestia noted. Vinyl thrust a hoof at Luna.
Well, she went to the moon!
There was a pause before she blushed and ducked her head Luna's direction.
Oh, sorry. It's alright.
Luna muttered, though she held a tight frown.
One does not simply fly to the moon, Vinyl. I was transported there and back near instantly. They are not the same things. And we can't just try to modify the upper atmosphere to let Addie's ship in.
Twilight added seriously.
Do you know the kind of damage that could do to Equestria as a whole? I'm not sure it's possible in the first place, but even if we could form a relatively small opening for Addie's ship, we have absolutely no idea what would happen. I do, actually.
Celestia passed a hoof through her mane and averted her eyes.
There's a reason the Badlands are so inhospitable.
Twilight's jaw dropped as all eyes turned on the Princess of the Sun.
You never mentioned anything like that before. We all have things we'd rather forget about.
Celestia muttered. She turned her gaze upon Vinyl, who shrank a little.
Believe me, Miss Scratch, that magic will not solve this situation. So, what do we do? Just hope for the best?
Vinyl looked at Twilight, who averted her gaze.
Is there nothing we could do?
She cast her gaze upon each of the princesses, her heart sinking a little more as she found no answers. Slowly, she leaned against the table and set her head in her hooves.
That's not fair.
She felt Luna's hoof on her shoulder.
We have 1.5 years to think about something. The brightest minds in Equestria will be up to the task. The important thing now is that Miss Longstaff has hope. If she succumbs to despair, none of our preparations will matter. She needs the courage to try.
Celestia added. Twilight nodded.
And you're the only one who can give it to her. As long as you don't surrender, neither will she.
Vinyl sat up and stared at the radio. She thought on Addie, alone in some tin can forever, having no pony to talk to for years. She couldn't imagine having to be in that situation for the rest of her life. The very idea left a cold feeling inside of her.
Okay.
She managed a weak smile for the princesses.
I'll do my part. Addie deserves to have some hope after all she's been through. If that's all I can do for her, I'll give her hope in spades.
Celestia beamed.
Very good, Miss Scratch. We knew we could count on you.
Twilight added, sharing the expression. A quiet moment passed as Vinyl thought on the future. Despite her earlier doubts, she was feeling good. Somehow she knew things would turn out alright. Addie needed her, and she would answer that call.
I think that's enough for tonight. We all have things we need to do, and not just for Miss Longstaff.
Luna said.
So says you.
Celestia stood and tossed her head with a smirk.
I'm off duty as of now. We'll get through this, Vinyl.
Twilight said, as she made to follow her mentor out.
Don't worry. There's plenty of time to think up a solution.
However, Luna didn't move. Vinyl waited for her to get up from the table, growing more and more anxious by the second. The door closed, leaving them alone. Vinyl wondered if she wasn't meant to leave too, though she had hoped to take this moment to think for a while. Then again, this was Luna's study, wasn't it? At last, Luna spoke.
I wanted to ask you something.
Vinyl flinched.
Oh, yeah?
The princess smiled softly.
Do you believe that hope is worth it? Worth it?
Vinyl scratched behind her ear as she thought.
I don't know what you mean. My sister is an optimist,
Luna said.
Twilight will follow wherever she goes. However, I am more prosaic.
Now Vinyl cocked her head.
You're ordinary?
With a small huff of a laugh, Luna shook her head.
Direct. Oh.
Another scratch of the ear.
I still don't get it.
Luna sighed and turned her eyes to the radio.
Celestia and Twilight are determined to believe that Addie will make it to Equestria alive. But I prefer to acknowledge and prepare for the alternative.
Vinyl's heart sank.
So you think hoping is pointless? On the contrary.
Luna's wan smile turned back to her.
Hope is a precious and very important commodity. Without hope, I never would have made it back to Equestria for the moon. You see, Vinyl, though I had become a monster in the form of Nightmare Moon, deep within me was always a secret acknowledgement, a desire, a hope that my soul could be saved. Had I lost that tiny flame within myself, I am sure the elements of harmony would only have sent me back to the moon for another millennium, rather than save me from the corruption within.
Vinyl stared at her hooves and said nothing. She didn't feel like it was her place to speak on this subject, certainly not to Princess Luna. Yet as she thought more and more on her words...
What I am asking is whether you believe that regardless of the outcome, the hope is worth the trouble. If Miss Longstaff were to die trying to reach Equestria, do you believe that is a better fate than her giving up and spending the rest of her life floating through the empty void?
Luna asked.
I don't know.
Vinyl looked up into Luna's eyes.
Maybe? Think on that subject for a while, Miss Scratch.
Luna arose and turned for the door.
Think about Addie. Think on yourself. Think on your father and mother. When you formed an answer, only then will you truly understand that yours is the single most important task of all.
Vinyl watched her go, her mind running through the question over and over again. All alone, she tried to make sense of what Luna was saying. She turned her eyes to the faint rain and listened to its endless pattering, only to marvel at the realization that this was a sound Addie hadn't heard in years. Suddenly, it seemed like a precious noise. It's only 3 more chapters left until it's done. That went by fast. Anywho, let's get on to our beautiful donators. Top donators: Jessie Smith, Star 630, BadassWaffle, Onlyonething, Ceru, Orion, and Caladis. Magic, JockeTF, Luciisu, Darkside, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel, Sky, Salson, Rolan, Sword Brother, Mortronomicron, Library, Runeslight, Will, Chris, Twinkie, Rice, Shadow Moon, Luigi, Chancer Crust, Big Smoke, Bobcat, Murder Princess, Jet, Little Mighty, Solar Symphony, and many more fantastic people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.